This is Joe Rabil with Rabil Stock Research. And what I want to do today, we're going to cover the market. I'm going to go through some indices, show what's taking place, and talk about the key levels. Obviously there's been a lot of volatility, and we'll kind of frame out what's taken place. And I will go through the symbol requests that came through this week. But what I wanted to do in the lesson is actually discuss some foreign country funds that they're listed in the Stockcharts program. And so I go through them periodically. And this time there were some names that caught my eye. I thought it would be worth using the lesson to cover these in kind of like a way where we used to do our daily 5, where I'm looking at 5 patterns that look pretty attractive and go through the reasons why, looking at especially in MACD and ADX in multiple timeframes. So let's go ahead and get started with that, and then we'll get into the U.S. markets. Okay, let's start out. I just want to show what I'm looking at here. I've got a monthly chart, bottom left, weekly in the bottom right, and then a daily in the upper right. And then on the weekly in the upper left here, I've got the relative strength. I've got RSI, and I've also included the 18-month line with a zigzag in place for the price structure on the weekly chart. All right. So typically when I'm looking for patterns, I'm looking at the monthly and weekly, the weekly being kind of like the main time frame. And I want to make sure there's signs of real potential when I look at the upper time frame, the monthly time frame. So one of the things that I like to look at when I'm browsing through lists like this is looking at this ADX, and I'm looking for one of two things. I'm either looking for a lot of strength in the blue line, meaning the blue line is clearly above 25 and trending to the upside, and we would be looking for pullbacks in those situations. But the ones that I'm going to talk about today, for the most part, in these foreign country funds, are low ADX patterns. They've been sitting and kind of doing nothing for the last few years, and you can see this sort of basing pattern that has developed in this Austria fund. All right, so this is the one we're going to start out with. Now, what I look for is low ADX in 2 consecutive time frames. All right, and then on the lower time frame, which is in this case the weekly chart, I'm looking for signs of improvement and strength starting to show up. That did take place on this breakout here. And then we had a pretty sharp decline on heavy volume. But if you notice what happened, we completely erased that decline. We're back above the high of that big red bar, and we did it very, very quickly. So that tells me that there's pretty strong support underneath. Yes, we could potentially get a little pullback or whatever, but I think just based on looking at these 2 patterns and the way they're developing, we've got this low ADX condition in place, and we're starting to emerge out of it on this time frame. And also notice the improvement in the relative performance versus the S&P. Now, there's one other thing I do want to talk about, and that is the RSI. So I've got these 2 RSIs. Let me zero in on this for a second. The 20 RSI is in red, and that basically tells us, it helps us with the trend, right? So if we get a strong enough move where the red can hold above 50 on a pullback, where the moving average is starting to turn up, and a pullback is defined as where this gray line, the 5 RSI, drops down under 25, or under the 50 mark. So we're basically looking for this gray line to come down under 50 and the red line, 20 RSI, to hold above. And when we have that, we have some signs. Now, I want to see other signs of improvement, like a breakout pattern or something like that, to precede it. And we get this improvement in a relative basis, or improvement on a momentum basis. Any of those take place, I'm kind of intrigued by these RSI signals. So this one really does kind of hit home for me. I mean, there's a big base of support. There's signs of improving momentum, especially on the weekly chart. RS is improving. RSI is showing signs of strength, and we've just come down to support and gotten a really good reaction. Let's look at Belgium. This one's a little bit different. It's a little on the early side, but we're still seeing the improvement on the relative strength line. And notice this is a little bit interesting, where the RSI pattern, I think, looks pretty good, almost like we want to anticipate a breakout. So we want to be on the lookout for this coming back up through probably around 20 and a half, 20 and 3/4, something like that. I think that would be a pretty good sign based on what's taken place. Again, we've got low ADX on the weekly chart. We've got signs of improvement on the monthly MACD. It's been a little noisy on the weekly, so that's why I'd like to see a little bit more strength, but certainly one of the country funds I think I'd be watching. Now, look at this ECH, this Chile fund. Look at what this monthly chart looks like. This is where I get, when I go through thousands and thousands of stock charts, I'm looking for something that not only is forming a low ADX condition, but it's doing it in a very quiet manner. You see how we've had not only low trend strength, we've also had low volatility because all three of these lines, the buyers, the sellers, and the ADX, have been below the 25 line for a few years. That is a real sign that we're looking at low volatility. You can really see all the compression taking place. So we get this big move down, and we get a wave down, and then a smaller wave, and then another smaller wave, and another smaller wave. And it looks like we're very, very close to breaking out of this. This is one I would be watching very closely. Now, look at what's taking place on the weekly. Notice how we got this strong move, and then we make the higher low. ADX is confirming, and we got a little pinch play on the MACD. Also, notice how MACD on the monthly chart is crossing above the zero line for the first time, in about 6 years. So certainly some things taking place on this I'd be watching really closely. Now, look at Kuwait. Kuwait doesn't have as much history, but the pattern itself is really attractive. We got a nice cupping pattern holding the 18-month, which is now rising. We've got the MACD turning at the zero line. And then again, we're showing signs of buyers showing up, and we get this kind of breakout pattern, and then we're holding the breakout area on the pullback. So kind of intriguing from that standpoint. Another one where we're showing signs of improvement on RS, both the relative strength and on a momentum basis based on the RSI. So certainly another one I would be watching. And what I like about all the ones I'm bringing up here are ones that are early in their pattern. Yes, there are some countries that have been moving up, and they're a little bit more mature in their move. This is early emerging basing patterns. Now, final one is this UAE, and you can see how we just bounced off the 18-month line. Volume pattern definitely shows an influx of some significant volume over the course of the last 3 or 4 months. For the most part, starting late last year. But look at the low ADX condition on the monthly. Look at the MACD cupping around at the zero line on the monthly, right? And then we get this powerful strength show up after a low ADX condition on the weekly chart, and then we break out, pull back. Again, we have this kind of a quick reversal, almost like a V-bottom into support. We V-bottom out of that and show really nice strength on an RSI buy. So this kind of combination I'm on the lookout for. If we had a lot of U.S. stocks doing this, then we'd probably be talking about those. There's so much volatility in the U.S. market. I think we're going to need to do a little mending before we start to see this type of pattern. But worth taking a look at a few of these. If you're enjoying the content, hit that like button and also subscribe. So my services can be found at rabelstockresearch.com. I'm on this page right now. You can see at the top, I've got my advanced trend and momentum courses. There's 3 different courses now. I've individually priced them, or you can buy them as a bundle, and they are lifetime access now. So I changed that. It's not year to year. Okay. And then we have the individual package. I have about 2 to 3 reports each week, plus a special video, weekly video for that package that covers a lot of details into what I'm seeing for the week. So if you have an interest, go ahead and take a look. Also, the book is on the book tab. You can go if this is a good place to start if you're new to my methodology. My comments are for educational purposes only. Please do your own research before making any investments. All right, I want to do a quick look at the S&P. Now, if you want a thorough update, I do that Friday morning on my YouTube channel. Now, I just want to follow up because we had this decline. And now we've rallied back to the 50% retracement level. We've kind of sort of tested this low. Obviously, a lot of volume here. And now we're kind of working our way back up. But we need to get through, I would say, around 5,500 to kind of confirm this little reversal and get back above the 50% mark. I think that would be pretty important here. Now, I mean, there's a lot of resistance overhead. You can see the 18-week rolling over in place. And we still have the 18-month up around 54. It's right about where price is right now. So we're going to see something. We're going to need something something a little bit more convincing of follow through, I think, to put in a decent short-term low. But then I still am kind of leaning more towards this turning into some kind of a channel formation, maybe with a higher push to the upside before hitting resistance and then channeling for now. But let's go ahead and switch over to the QQQ. Very similar pattern. Okay, I mean, what we're showing here is a break of this steep sort of downtrend line. The first time we've seen that. All right, now we have already tested this low. Again, big volume off the bottom. We got a little bit of a pinch play off this retracement, and in both cases, both indexes are showing a pattern that I call an undercut pattern, where you're undercutting these key lows, and on the S&P, you actually undercut the 5,000 mark. So and we do that, and then we come back and rally up and test this area somewhat, and then turn back to the upside. Now, I'd feel a lot better if we can get back up through this prior high, but I think we have to give credit to a potential for a little bit more follow through. Maybe this wants to work its way up towards 500 or something like that. And my reasoning is that people have gotten very bearish. I mean, the sentiment numbers are what we've seen in the past at bear market low levels. People have jumped on that bandwagon. So the possibility is there. I'm still leaning towards this being more of a trading play right now, but we're going to have to evaluate the strength of the move and see if the momentum indicators show real improvement here on the way up. And if they do, then we'd be considering looking at playing a pullback, and then we'd watch the pullback. So right now, we had a lot of strength to the downside. The only way we can eradicate that decline is to show strength to the upside. You can't just have a little ABC rally to the upside and eliminate the strength that we saw going down. So we're going to want to see some strength, and if that strength is good, then we're going to want to see a pullback, and hopefully the strength on that pullback isn't bad, and then you can look at entering. So I think we've got a little bit more time here before we have ourselves a situation where we can feel confident. Now, that doesn't mean you can't trade. There's definitely trading opportunities that are going to be out there, but you're going to have to be pretty nimble, I think, in the short term. Now, a part of the reason why I continue to act like this is that we're not really seeing the Russell 2000 in a way that makes me feel confident. This is more of a sign of a broad-based market, right? We want to see a broad movement. We don't want the stocks that have been getting killed leading the market on the way back up. You know, you want to see a shift in the number of stocks that are participating, and also see improvement in this index, mainly on a relative basis. I'd love to see this sort of turn back to the upside, and get this moving average flipping back up. But it's going to take a little bit of work to get there. I'm happy to see that today it is outperforming the other indices today. So maybe that's a good sign and maybe a start. I don't think there's much downside at all. We're down into this major support area. It came down and touched down at 175 and is getting a really good rally off of that. I did want to take a look at Bitcoin because I think you have to respect what's taking place here. We got actually, and I mentioned this periodically, but we had this move up, we pull back or consolidate, made another move to the upside and then pull back, getting pretty close to the 18-month again. And notice what's going on. We're getting another RSI buy signal where the RSI 20 is holding above the 50 level, and the RSI 5 not only got down below 50, it got down below 30 and then showed this little mini divergence off the low. So a really good sign. I would be looking for maybe a little bit of a pullback on the daily chart and pull this a little bit closer to 90, something like that. But I think this is definitely worth watching if we do get a little orderly setback. Now, I did get a question about gold. I mean, you know, the reality is that this has made a phenomenal move to the upside, and we are potentially forming what I would call a buying climax, where if we make a new 52-week high for the year and then close down on the week, it's basically a reversal bar, right? Where you're at your price opens up here and then closes below. It doesn't always have to open above, but in this case it does. It gaps up, and then if it can close below, we haven't finished the week, but if we close at where we're down for the week after hitting a new 52-week high, then and the volume is bigger, right? And it's a little bit more of a wide range bar, then it could be fairly important short-term top. Now, we had the same thing happen here. If you notice, we hit a new high and then closed down for the week. All right. But That was not a really big bar. This is a little bit bigger, and the volume is a lot heavier. Well, actually, no, the volume is pretty heavy, and sometimes it takes 2 or 3 of these buying climaxes to get something to top out when you're this strong. So I do have to give it a little bit of credit. I mean, the volume has grown to a point where I think we have to be on the lookout for some kind of a retracement or sell off the peak. But, playing it on the short side, I don't know that I would recommend that. I had a question about that. I don't think I would be doing that. I'd probably be more inclined to be taking some profits in some of the gold stocks if I were in them. So just kind of think that way. All right, let's take a look at some of these requests that came through. So Tesla. So what I don't like about Tesla is you had this really nice breakout and then you erased the entire 100% of the move, right? 100% erased of that up move. And you can really see it on the monthly, 2 big up bars and then 2 big down bars after a pause bar. But if you notice, we are coming down to a pretty big support area. I think this 200 area is pretty strong support. What I think is likely, and what I like to do just to make it crystal clear, I'm going to switch this to a quarterly chart. Now, if you look at the way this is played out, we had this kind of big reversal. It looks to me like you've got really strong resistance up at 300. Okay, so if I look at it in those terms, then I'm sort of thinking, yeah, we could get a rally up, we could get a rally a bit, but more likely it's going to channel for a little while and not necessarily turn into something, really significant right away. So I do think the 300 mark is pretty important. It acted as resistance for a while, and then we re-entered it. It just failed at it. So the question becomes, can we get back above that? If we do, then it might start to look a little bit more attractive, but it is going to take time either way. All right, look at something like Meta. Now, this has been going through a correction just like all the other big stocks, right, in these Mag 7 stocks, but we're only pulling back to the 18-month line. We still have pretty good momentum conditions on the longer-term chart, and we did break both the 18 and the 40 on the weekly, but we're back into the next price support level. So if we can start to turn the corner here, this to me looks more like an opposing trend pattern into a long-term uptrend still. If we get any further weakness, let's say this rallies up and then comes back down and makes a lower low, then I would get a lot more concerned about what's taking place here, and the pattern is going to take a lot more time to play. So the good news is we don't really have to make a decision here. We need to see more improvement on the weekly before we can consider this. All right, now I did get, this is an interesting little pattern I thought I would take a look at because I got a request about this. And what's interesting is look at the monthly chart. You see how this has turned the corner and we get this big green bar, and then we go through a 3 to 4 month consolidation pattern. But look at the overall pattern, look at the volume pattern. This is still held together really well. And if you notice on the momentum on the weekly was incredibly strong, and now we've kind of consolidated back down. We're still in pretty good shape on an RSI basis. We're still in pretty good shape on a relative basis. And again, holding that 18-month, I think anything that's held the 18-month through this process, we probably want to be watching here. Now, I do think this will have some issues up at the 18-week. It might take a little bit of work to get itself going, but I definitely think this is a stock to keep an eye on. Now, I mentioned this CrowdStrike last week as a stock that was holding up really well, and then I got a question about what would be the entry because I didn't actually go into that. I would go down and take a hard look at what's going on a daily basis. So we had a move down, and then we rallied up, and we made a lower low here, and now we've made a higher high. All right, we came back and took out this high. So in terms of price structure, we're in a bear alert status. Okay, after going through a correction phase to the downside, relative strength still looks pretty good. In fact, on an RSI basis, we're actually giving a buy signal on the daily. But I would be looking for this to kind of come back up through this peak here to feel a lot better. And that level is around 400. I think if we can get back up through the 400 mark, I'd feel a lot better about this situation as a potential buy. I wouldn't play the pinch play here. I know it is offering a pinch play setup, but just based on the conditions here, I probably want to see this get through 400, and then I'd feel a little bit better about this. Now, I think this environment, you've got to be a little bit more nimble. You have to understand what you're in for. So, you could also reduce your size a little bit. If you want to play something like this, play with a little bit smaller size, see if it can turn into something, that works out. Let's look at something like HDB. Now, I talk about these foreign country stocks, right? Well, this is out of India. Look at the base formation, the breakout that's taking place. And we're starting to get a little bit of pullback. It should have a decent amount of support at 70. I think this is pretty attractive from that standpoint. Look at IonQ. So this is in that quantum computing space. And we had the really strong move. Now, we gave a pretty strong retracement, but look at how we're still in a pretty good shape on the longer term chart. So again, I'd be more inclined to think we're doing something like this, but the momentum signs on this are still pretty good. We're holding the zero line. Maybe looking for some kind of a zigzag here could be worthwhile. So to me, this is good. This is good pullback. This is like a pullback into support, right? There's pretty good support underneath. Contrary to that would be something like this Marvell, which I think is more of a sell on a rally. We broke support. Now we're into the next support area, but we've hurt the trend. And I would be using a rally if this can work its way up into the low, maybe up to 70, 75 or something like that. I'd probably be using that more as a selling chance than using this, unless you want to trade it. You trade it up for a little upside move. Thanks for watching today. If you have any stock requests you'd like me to analyze on next week's show, just send them to stocktalk@stockcharts.com, or you can put them in the comment area below. Also, if you want to learn some more about some of these techniques, you can go to my YouTube channel called Invest Like a Pro. Have a great week, and we'll see you next time.